So, you need wood for roofing, doors, tables, chairs, or perhaps some fancy wooden flooring, and you buy from any market. Oh, nice. But hold on, ma. Do you know where all that wood comes from? Every day in Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests.
Ordinary community member rarely sees the importance of the forest in their community. But the purpose of the SRA is to let the community members have a feel of the importance the forest in their community is bringing to them. So the SRA is supposed to be used for something that every member of the community can benefit.
And our water
process was piloted in 1998, which was legally accepted in 2004. Since SRA implementation became mandatory, different companies, perhaps due to different understanding of how it should work, have implemented it their own way. So there were some challenges. One of the criteria is that community should be within 5-kilometer radius of the area of operation. You have forests that stretch 20-30 kilometers. What is 5 kilometers? So its implementation became a bit of a challenge. You have companies going to certain communities and they say, well, we've already signed an agreement with this community, therefore you, this community, don't deserve anything. So we've had to engage some communities where they say, right, so this project has sort of really confused the companies from the concept where
you need wood for roofing, doors, tables, chairs, or perhaps some fancy wooden flooring, and you buy from any market. Oh, nice. But hold on, man. Do you know where all that wood comes from? Every day in Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests.
Like the law enforcers, such as forest police, the rules and responsibilities of devastating
what they do
is to sponsor
even our own staff are not adequately knowledgeable in SRA.
We take upon ourselves as part of the project implementation, coaching the companies how to properly implement SRA, and not just go to the community, pay money to someone that cannot be accounted for.
KWC and NDF, I'm not much here, our
Take the SRA document, we have the code of conduct, and then we have the social responsibility aspects. The code of conduct stipulates the relationship between the contractor and the communities in the contractor's work.
You need wood for roofing, doors, tables, chairs, or perhaps some fancy wooden flooring when you buy from any market. Oh, nice. But hold on, man. Do you know where all that wood comes from? Every day in Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. And lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests.
Start actual operation. The permit holder must have completed the signing of the SRA and probably the implementation of the
without these forests, we don't have clean air and all the benefits we derive from the signing of the SRA will decline drastically. Our water sources are also jeopardized. But at NDF, we think
whether the communities are aware or not, the timber companies have to fulfill the SRA, and the evidence must be available within the Ghana Wood Tracking System. Otherwise, the Ghana Wood Tracking System will raise red flags instantly. And when the red flags are raised, it means that you cannot get a flag license for your timber that otherwise you have harvested.
We have now gone ahead to establish what we call local SRA. We've gone ahead to stipulate that there should be opening of bank accounts for the lodgement of the money. There should be what we call governing the use of the money. There should be proper monitoring, and you should be reported there.
So you need wood for roofing, doors, tables, chairs, or perhaps some fancy fancy wooden flooring and you buy from any market, old nice. But hold on, man. Do you know where all that wood comes from? Every day in Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests. Illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests. And without these forests, we don't have clean air and all the benefits we derive from the forest. Good agriculture yields will decline drastically in our waters. So you need wood for roofing, doors, tables, chairs, or perhaps some any market, old nice. But hold on, man. Do you know where all that wood comes from? Every day in Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests. In Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests. And without these forests, we don't have clean air and all the benefits we derive from the food down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests. And without these forests, we don't have clean air and all the benefits we derive from the food down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forests. And without these forests, we don't have clean air and all the benefits we derive from the food down and transported to the markets.
I have so far signed this SRA with 4 communities, and all these communities are within the Achim Oda Forestry District.
In Sota, Kain to me, Eden, Emma, the man who called Yambaka a tree, the anything he say, come there, why he be a breaking. In Sota, Sai on the play, Emma, the man who called Yambaka a tree, the anything he say, breaking. Yeah, Castle, Sai on the play, it is Campona, the people toss a metal to
so to me boa you go say on kwan benefit say the ope ma tu su ho amamu eno na nkan sa rekra ho ma tu amamu ma me dan a me sisi ho me dan na ma hospital for I see on team. So to me boa you go say on kwan benefit say the.
In 2017, our records we collected from the FSD shows that about 299 communities received almost 790,000 Ghana cedis in 2017. And it's been impressive for some communities. They have shown us evidence of what they've used those monies for in terms of projects. And those that have not shown any evidence of what they've done with the money are beginning to realize that the money is not for those who are collecting as individuals. And then they become palpable and you have to hold them responsible as to what they
Nature and Development Foundation, NDF, and Kumasi Wood Clusters, KWC. And in Liberia, we have Liberia Timber Association, that's LIPTA, and Liberia Chainsaw Timber and Dealers Union, Lexadon.
The forests of Ghana are owned by the communities, and government is responsible for sustainable management of the resource. We realized that the forest range communities were not getting any direct benefit from the timber harvesting. We have what we call stumpage, that is the money timber contractors pay for the exploitation of the timber. The stumpage is shared with nothing going to the communities who live close to these forests. There were agitations from many of those communities whenever timber exploitation took place. Sometimes they would block roads, hijack the contractor to pay huge amounts of money before they could work. So in order to rationalize the whole environment, we decided to enact a law which will formally offer benefits to these forest range communities.
SRA is Social Responsibility Agreement. It's a concept that the Forestry Commission came up with, and that was designed to help communities where the forest reserves are located.
A bank forester or contractor mojuman and now Mutaina SRA.
Yes, I idea. October 20 years will be to be on fine idea and will be into me.
For example, if I go to a particular area, right now I'm at a Sinapam Forest Reserve, I have to sign a social responsibility agreement with the community. And that means I am going to give them a certain amount of money.
The SRA is different from royalties. Reason backing the SRA is that most of the times these royalties, by the time they even get to the communities, time is far elapsed. Ordinary community member rarely sees the importance of the forest in their community. But the purpose of the SRA is to let the community members have a feel of the importance the forest in their community is bringing to them. So the SRA is supposed to be used for something that every member of the community can benefit from.
This concept was piloted in 1998, which was legally accepted in 2004. Since SRA implementation became mandatory, different companies, perhaps due to different understanding of how it should work, have implemented it their own way. So there were some challenges. One of the criteria is that communities should be within 5-kilometer radius of the area of operation. You have forests that stretch 20-30 kilometers. What is 5 kilometers? So its implementation became a bit of a challenge. You have companies going to certain communities and they say, well, we've already signed an agreement with this community and therefore you, this community, don't deserve anything. So we've had to engage companies to do it right. So this project has sort of reintroduced the companies to the concept. We have laid out the tenets of what a good social responsibility agreement is.
One of the things we've done is to create awareness among them and train them on awareness of their rights and responsibilities as communities, awareness of the rights and responsibilities of other forest stakeholders like timber companies, like the law enforcers such as Forestry Commission, their roles and responsibilities in the SRA implementation.
What they do is to sponsor and build capacity, especially of forest range communities, and sometimes even our own staff who are not adequately knowledgeable in SRA.
We took it upon ourselves as part of the project implementation to coaching the companies how to properly implement SRAs and not just go to the community, pay money to somebody that cannot be accounted for.
KWC and NDF, omuno mbechire awo eho animdie na yesusu ye de egusu ayaya eboa ye wo ya hashin.
KWC ombechire kwan abefa so a SRS no ya betumi de ayeden adijuma ade aboa community no ama community na ayede afa ne tuma pa ayeden afra.
If you take the SRA document, we have the code of conduct and then we have the social responsibility aspect.
The code of conduct stipulates relationship between the contractor and the communities in the contractor's workings. The contractor may not work on taboo days. The contractor is supposed to employ a certain number of the local people as staff. The social obligations is the 5% aspect. So in addition to the payment of the money, the contractor must respect the people and forge close relationships with the communities.
Before a permit holder can start actual operation, the permit holder must have completed the signing of the SRA and probably the implementation of it.
Forestry will calculate the 5%. So for example, if it comes to 4,000, I'm supposed to come up with that 4,000 before I even start operation. So I have to go back to the Forestry Commission with that signed agreement with my receipt to prove that I have actually paid.
Whether the communities are aware or not, the timber companies have to fulfill the SRA, and the evidence must be available within the Ghana Wood Tracking System. Otherwise, the Ghana Wood Tracking System will raise red flags that this company has not fulfilled. And when the red flags are raised, it means that you cannot get a flag license for your timber that you have harvested.
We have now gone ahead to establish what we call local SRA committees. We've gone ahead to stipulate that there should be opening of bank accounts for the lodgement of the money. There should be a work plan governing the use of the money. There should be proper monitoring, which should be reported on by especially the Forestry Commission. And then we've also gone ahead to ensure that enough awareness is created. So since we institutionalized these measures, there has been tremendous improvement in SRA implementation.
SRA bida ya Sanofi rap company
e bae no omo mia ti asese teacher for na ne Fred bi aseba no enam so mu ni ba bitinti omo ma nti e basa nkora no mo no mta nko school
te say ye besi da bia teacher for no obatena ne wani akọ e mo fra so
nti omo anya physical cash e share de bi asene to bed materials ma o
SRA no me share ahye no ma ye be twice Goja bridge me ko hoko ye adwuma ma eden amomo na recently susu ye weighing center awo hian ngwashi amomo ye gina Goja bridge ka ni ha ka nan kola ntimi ye de enko school
kane no ke bi edu saa season se kura na ye ntimi mafu efise bedu ha ne nsuo no ayiri a obi antimi nko ema se na wotwe nu obusumi obi atifie enam se omu beye ensu ntikwan no ema omu twa so mae ka atimi be fa ye niema e de ko ema ye ho haaye bi
me ko wo yin na me ko ne mem na nyame aye ya dom atu abu nsem na abu nso ba begie wa ha ka ta me ye nko ba bia abiem ama ye mba na nafo ye begege wo ma ye begege wo mo ha sesi a bia na ka me ko na ka sika kura ye me den abu abetwa ageme
me no mu hia eye ya osama infante ele ho no o je se mo pe ka kwan
na ekwan ne ye ho ti first no say ye ti koko a ye difa nsueni opi ho a wo kwa na hye na akomuntu nyame amboa koko no nyina beko wo nipa na so obeka nsuo no
na amajewa timbers in fact wa boy bebrain fi ya sama ekofante na ekwan da ho nyame adom wa ma katapira be yi kwan no ho amaye afi wo fi don kokurum ekobisidu asenso a wa ma ya be yi ho kwan no so de amaye afi oboae oma no brain plastic chairs maako aduonu a ye de ye oma no empuntu djuma
ekwan no faso a ede abre womo ne sisia no omo nso akoko infa encrosso river plan bi se de kia ne cave ne bebere ko de ubo mo de ba first na se opinfo kokko wo a je de to hwi barim na omo twi ne ba ene de ekwan beda ho no sa nyam ni na asa de etwa.
I have so far signed this SRA with 4 communities, and all these communities are within the Achim Oda Forestry District.
Nsuo to a ka entumi eden emba nti emba no kura ko ibi a ombeka echiri nti ene nti yesi hia se sika omude aboa ye de bi eye bridge no
Falcon Ridge SRA or the breye ye de bi to roofing sheet e de kobo emma ne mema eja na abia so no na ye the background ye guso a ye cast concrete na ye wie and this corona bi nso ye de bi koto cement no to a dwumadie no so na emom de ye wie akakakra asa ye tumi awie
bi o ho a e ba krumu na pipe a omu yusu no krumu ni nyina ase eti yen sare na de mema omu eno no mo de pipe no ma community nyansu
sare impo fraction say 5% no be chira mam se me ye no itimi ye ma no bro so a say community nyina ade ho adanse
community ni hia bibia enya sare ne nkokra se otime boa omu ne kwa se onko benefit se de o pe matu nsu a ho ama omu eno na nkan sare kra ho matu ama omu a me dan a me sisi wo me de dan na ma hospital for I see omu team
In 2017, our records we collected from the FSD shows that about 299 communities received almost 790,000 Ghana cedis as SRA. And it's been impressive for some communities. They have shown us evidence of what they've used those monies for in terms of projects. And those that have not shown any evidence of what they've done with the money are beginning to realize that the money is not for those who are collecting as individuals. And then they become palpable, and you have to hold them responsible as to what they've done with the money.
How are you say Cocoas na abanya kayama? Say 300 now benya, Obabani 50, a papa for a piko. But when you kind so the amaya calculate your can, you see how they ma by no ye 5% at the ama community. Over the anyhow. A buying so my quite may repressing, or send a woman channel. I said, see, they are against you contractor.
SRA they said I can't say they are pajabi the let's say boy. No more sir.
Yes, I kind and so many yes unity. One man yamina yes
the communities think that the amount that is being paid as SRA is very small for them. We have made them to be aware that every tree has its value. Where we have valuable trees like Odum, Sapele and the rest, when they come to do SRA, you see that the amount will be so high. We have always been telling them, as we protect the forest and stop illegal activities, because when they also come, they look for the better species to remove. So if we are able to protect the forest very well, and those valuable trees are there, then it will make the SRA to also go up.
I have a very good working relationship with the communities. So if someone tries to enter a place where I work illegally, somebody from there will call me, and I will call the forestry people immediately for them to go and apprehend the person, because they know me, they have my phone number, and they are the ones who protect it for me.
Forest, you know, your bohu bansini beya ubi eden infi baby emiwrim ana ijebi kra tuma ibe share say yibi dum no amama entuma enshi.
Ye hwe say ye ma operators no emba mebubudu an basabasa. Nti bribia ibi hu omo no ye draw na attention say media say na ekoso ono so watu anamondo aba abehwe.
We are happy at NDF to see that our efforts are yielding results.
When the CSOs started coming in, more or less as arbiters, we've seen a complete change in the field where engagement is now better. We no longer get roadblocks as we had in the past.
I think it has benefited the community a lot.
Community no first nanka omo higher ben pa. SRA ni ba mu no ye ma omo enkyekere mo mu hu say mo de amudi ene SRA ti me de me pese entra ho na ye nya sumbi.
Companies are complying now without having to be pushed to actually fulfill SRA.
And it will also interest you to know that other than SRA, development that would have taken long to reach certain communities, through SRA, the communities are receiving those developments now. So SRA is actually helping the social and economic development of the local communities.
The appeal I have to communities is that, yes, I mean, everybody's happy getting the money from the companies, but in the same way, it's rights and responsibilities. And therefore, whatever communities expect from companies, we expect the community also to provide that service which companies expect from them. I believe that if this is done, then together we'll have a perpetual engagement for the benefit of the communities, for the companies, and then for the people in general.
We expect the government to come in and improve the system. The illegal materials that are removed get onto the market and tends to underprice the material, and therefore legal material become more expensive and people do not want to patronize the legal material. If the assumption that government consumes a lot of timber in their developmental projects is true, then we would expect that the government would also ensure that in all its projects legal timber are used so that the demand for the illegal timber would definitely go down, and therefore there will be no motivation for the illegal operators also to continue plundering the resource.
So, you need wood for roofing, doors, tables, chairs, or perhaps some fancy wooden flooring, and you buy from any market. Oh, nice. But hold on, ma. Do you know where all that wood comes from? Every day in Ghana, illegal logging goes on in our forests. Lots and lots of timber trees are illegally chopped down and transported to the markets, devastating our once rich forest.
But hey, that's not our problem, is it?
Well, if we continue like this, there would not be any forest left. And without these forests, we don't have clean air and all the benefits we derive from the forest. Good agricultural yields like cocoa will decline drastically and our water sources are also jeopardized. But at NDF, we think a good way to choose your wood is from the www.ghanatimbermarket.com. Every wood sold on this site is legal and comes from well-managed forest. Communities around the forest receive benefits from the harvesting of timber. This helps the communities to thrive, to keep protecting our forests for future generations. So, whenever you need wood, buy legal wood. Buy from the www.ghanatimbermarket.com or download the Timber Market app.
Historically, timber companies have gone to communities and have benefited through various forms. Companies have had to provide some kind of benefit to the communities. In 1998, government made it mandatory for companies to provide 5% of their stumpage of total volume of timber which is removed from the community. That is provided to the community in the form of development projects, so that it's no longer at the discretion of companies to decide whether they want to give and what they want to give. Whereas in the past it was sort of voluntary, this time it has become mandatory.
The project is receiving funding from UK Aid under their Forest Governance, Market and Climate Program.
FGMC project is about building capacities of small and medium forest enterprises in Ghana and Liberia to trade in legal timber. This project was started in July 2018, which will be ending in March 2021. We have implementing project partners in Ghana and Liberia. In Ghana, we have Nature and Development Foundation, NDF, and Kumasi Wood Clusters, KWC. And in Liberia, we have Liberia Timber Association, that's LIPTA, and Liberia Chainsaw Timber and Dealers Union, Lexadon.
The forests of Ghana are owned by the communities, and government is responsible for sustainable management of the resource. We realized that the forest fringe communities were not getting any direct benefit from the timber harvesting. We have what we call stumpage, that is the money timber contractors pay for the exploitation of the timber. The stumpage is shared with nothing going to the communities who live close to these forests. There were agitations from many of those communities whenever timber exploitation took place. Sometimes they would block roads, hijack the contractor to pay huge amounts of money before they could work. So in order to rationalize the whole environment, we decided to enact a law which will formally offer benefits to these forest fringe communities.
SRA is Social Responsibility Agreement. It's a concept that the Forestry Commission came up with, and that was designed to help communities where the forest reserves are located.
Forester, contractor yi mojuma na omotanya SRA.
Yes, we are there. October 20 years ubi bitu be hu. For
example, if I go to a particular area, right now I'm at a Sinapam Forest Reserve, I have to sign a social responsibility agreement with the community. And that means I am going to give them a certain amount of money.
The SRA is different from royalties. Reason backing the SRA is that most of the times these royalties, by the time they even get to the communities, time is far elapsed. Ordinary community member rarely sees the importance of the forest in their community. But the purpose of the SRA is to let the community members have a feel of the importance the forest in their community is bringing to them. So the SRA is supposed to be used for something that every member of the community can benefit from.
This concept was piloted in 1998, which was legally accepted in 2004.
Since SRA implementation became mandatory, different companies, perhaps due to different understanding of how it should work, have implemented it their own way. So there were some challenges. One of the criteria is that communities should be within 5-kilometer radius of the area of operation. You have forests that stretch 20-30 kilometers. What is 5 kilometers? So its implementation became a bit of a challenge. You have companies going to certain communities and they say, well, we've already signed an agreement with this community and therefore you, this community, don't deserve anything. So we've had to engage companies to do it right. So this project has sort of reintroduced the companies to the concept. We have laid out the tenets of what a good social responsibility agreement is.
One of the things we've done is to create awareness among them and train them on awareness of their rights and responsibilities as communities, awareness of the rights and responsibilities of other forest stakeholders like timber companies, like the law enforcers such as Forestry Commission, their roles and responsibilities in the SRA implementation.
What they do is to sponsor and build capacity, especially of forest range communities, and sometimes even our own staff who are not adequately knowledgeable in SRA.
We took it upon ourselves as part of the project implementation to coaching the companies how to properly implement SRAs and not just go to the community, pay money to somebody that cannot be accounted for.
KWC and NDF, omuno mbechire awo eho enimdie na yesusu yede egusu ayeya eboa yewo ya hashin.
KWC ombechire ye kwan abefa so a SRS no ya betumi dia yede adijuma ade aboa community no ama community na yede afa ne tuma pa yede afra.
If you take the SRA document, we have the code of conduct and then we have the social responsibility aspect.
The code of conduct stipulates relationship between the contractor and the communities in the contractor's workings. The contractor may not work on taboo days. The contractor is supposed to employ a certain number of the local people as staff. The social obligations is the 5% aspect. So in addition to the payment of the money, the contractor must respect the people and forge close relationships with the communities.
Before a permit holder can start actual operation, the permit holder must have completed the signing of the SRA and probably the implementation of it.
Forestry will calculate the 5%. So for example, if it comes to 4,000, I'm supposed to come up with that 4,000 before I even start operation. So I have to go back to the Forestry Commission with that signed agreement with my receipt to prove that I have actually paid.
Whether the communities are aware or not, the timber companies have to fulfill the SRA, and the evidence must be available within the Ghana Wood Tracking System. Otherwise, the Ghana Wood Tracking System will raise red flags that this company has not fulfilled. And when the red flags are raised, it means that you cannot get a flag license for your timber that you have harvested.
We have now gone ahead to establish what we call local SRA committees. We've gone ahead to stipulate that there should be opening of bank accounts for the lodgement of the money. There should be a work plan governing the use of the money. There should be proper monitoring, which should be reported on by especially the Forestry Commission. And then we've also gone ahead to ensure that enough awareness is created. So since we institutionalized these measures, there has been tremendous improvement in SRA implementation.
SRA bida ye Sanofi rap company
e bae no omo mia ti asese teacher for na ya ne Fred bi ase ba no enam so mu ne ba bitinti omo ma nti e basa nkora no mo no omo tan ko school
te ye say ye besi be bia teacher for no obatena ne wani akọ ye mo franso
nti omo anya physical cash e share de bi ase ne to be the materials ma o
SRA no me sha ahye no ma ye be twice Goja bridge me ko hoko ye adwuma ma eden amomo e na recently susu ye weighing center awo hianu ngwashi amomo
ye gina Goja bridge ka ni ha ka nan kolantimi ye de enko school
kane no ke bi edu saa season say kura na ye ntimi mafu efi say bedu ha ne nsuo no ayiri a obi antimi nko ema se na wotwemie no obusumi obi atifie enam se omu beye enso nti kwan no ema omu twa so maaye car to me be fire near at the co am I high.
Me ko wo ya na me ko ne mem na nyame aye ya dom atu abu nsem na abu nso ba ba gia wa ha ka ta me yanko ba bia biom ama yamba na nafo ye begege wo ma ye begege wo mo ha sesi a bia na ka me ko na ka sika kra ya me den abu abetwa ageme
me no mo hia eye ya osama infante ele ho no o je se mo pe ka kwan
na ekwan ne ye ho ti first no say ye ti koko a ye difa nsueni bi ho a wo kwa na hye na akomuntu nyame amboa koko no nyina beko wo nipa na so obeka nsuo no mu na amajewa timbers in fact wa boy am bebree efi ya sama ekofante na ekwan da ho na miadum wa ma katapira abeyi kwan no ho amaye afi ufi don kokurum ekobisidu asenso a wa ma ya beyi ho kwan no so de amaye afi oboae oma no brain plastic chairs makoma aduonu a ye de ye oma no empuntujuma
ekwan no ifaso a ede abre womo ne se sisia no omo nso akoko infa encrosso river plan view is the kia ne calf ne bebre ko the ubama deba first na say open for ko wa je don to shibarim na omo twi ne ba ene de ekwan beda ho no sa nyom ni na say ne etwa.
I have so far signed this SRA with 4 communities, and all these communities are within the Achim Oda Forestry District.
In Sota, ka entumi eden emba nti emba no kra ko ibia ombeka echiri nti ene nti yesi hia say sika omude aboa ye de bi eye bridge no
Falcon Ridge SRA or the breye ye de bi to roofing sheet e de ko bo emba ne mema.
Whatever we decide to take action on, you give us the grace and the resources to do so successfully. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, Boachi, for the prayer and voluntarily did that. Thank you. We have here very diverse stakeholders. We are not up to 100, so I was thinking if we had to do individual introduction, it will take a lot of time. So I want to mention just the stakeholders group, and then we just see by hands, right? So please, may I see industry reps here? Industry, thank you guys. So these are timber industry people. When I mention industry, it's a bit ambiguous, but timber, forestry sector industry, please, forest sector. We also invited a very large number of government institutions, including Forestry Commission, Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, Forestry Research Institute of Ghana, EPA, Ministry of Environment, Science and Technology and Innovation. Please, may I see any hand from government right now? Okay. Dr. Lucy. No, Chris, you don't have to raise your hand. I know you. Chris is here. Who else from government? Okay, so we expect them to come later on. Or do you work for government? No. Okay. Civil society organizations. Please raise your hands. Just, yes. It's a big contingent. All right. We also invited our international partners, EU, UNDP, FCDO, a number of them. I think they are not here yet. Yeah, they are. Oh, editor is here. Only editor from FAO. Okay, we expect that other people will come. Thank you, editor. Academia, research institution. Okay, so I broke all of you into government institutions. But who else is here from academia other than the, anybody from the universities? Okay, no yet. We also invited the parliamentary select committees, the relevant parliamentary select committees. I know they may be sitting also now, or around, sometimes they say 12 o'clock in the forenoon or 10 o'clock. Perhaps we'll get some of them, and then we really need them here. We invited the Select Committee on Lands and Forestry, the Select Committee on Constitutional Legal, and then the Select Committee on Subsidiary Legislation as well. So I hope we'll get some representatives coming. Ghana Institute of Foresters, please. All right. Anybody from the criminal communities? Criminal communities. Okay, so thank you guys, thank you. We have the media. We invited a couple of media people. Please just show hand and let's see. All right, thank you. Okay, all right. Any other stakeholder group here that I haven't mentioned, please let me know. All right, so we have done that introduction very quickly than expected, but it's good. It means that we will be on time. So really, I'm combining two roles. Yes, I'm doing facilitation, but I'm supposed to give you why we are here. Really, you saw an email that we sent, and of course, when we come to this kind of gathering, you'll be wondering, what are we coming to do? So I will do that. I don't have a presentation, but I have a long speech. I hope I don't. No, it's made like a lawyer's writing, so it's paragraph and 12 fonts. So don't be scared. I'll finish probably 5 minutes. Yeah, I wanted to, but it's fine. Okay. Good morning once again. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Nature and Development Foundation, and our collaborating partners, to which Arusha, Ghana, Welcome, and Osfam, it is a pleasure to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to the stakeholder engagement on the new regulation on mining in forest reserve, LI2462. Considering the diverse stakeholders here, I know some of you may be hearing of our name for the first time, Nature and Development Foundation. So let me just take 1 minute to tell you who we are. We were formed a decade ago under the support of WWF International to succeed and implement conservation actions of the then WWF West African Forest Program. Since 2014, NDL has been working closely with the Forestry Commission and the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources on issues of timber legality, cocoa landscape restoration, collaborative wildlife conservation around the Mole National Park, and the public procurement policy on timber and timber products. Please visit our website, it's ndfwestafrica.org. Ladies and gentlemen, in November 2022, a law came into force to regulate mining in forest reserve. That law is called Environmental Protection, Mining and Forest Reserve Regulations 2022 LI2462. That LI was sponsored by EPA. That LI is the first time a law properly so-called has been passed to supposedly provide a legal regime for mining and forest reserve. Before that law, there was a guideline for mining and forest reserves from 2001 to 2016. The latest version of the guideline was 2019, and this was the last time civil society organizations were ever involved in any discussion on further reviewing the guideline for mining and forest reserves. This guideline for mining and forest reserve was born out of a situation where some 17 mining companies were granted prospecting licenses in forest reserves. However, stakeholders fearing the further depletion of forest reserves agreed in 1997 to provide that guidelines to regulate exploration and mining in forest reserves. Since the introduction of the guideline, only 3 mining operations have been undertaken in production forest reserve at Kibi in the Ashanti region, Tanasoro and Tano Extension in the Western region, and Ajunjua Bepo in the Eastern region. That guideline, even though it was not a law per se, limited mining and prospecting to only production forest reserves. For those of you who are not foresters, let me explain what production forest reserve means. Production forest reserve area of a forest reserve is an area within the forest reserve in which logging activities or harvesting of timber is permitted. So if you see the forest, it's not everywhere that you are permitted to remove timber. So production forest is the area where you are permitted to remove the timber. As we speak, by the coming into force of LI2462, both production forests and protected forest reserve are candidate mining sites. Ladies and gentlemen, the guideline also limited prospecting and mining to only 2% of the production forest reserve. So it's not only all the production forests that are even subject to mining. At the time, only 2%. As we speak, there is no limitation of the total percentage of forest reserves that can be put under mining. In fact, in my opinion, all the forest reserves in Ghana are now ready to be open for mining. We see, like I said, they are all candidate mining sites. Before LI2462 came into force in November 2022, our record indicated that there were only 3 mining operation production forest reserve, like I stated before. Please take note that since November 2022, 8 new mining licenses have been granted to mine in forest reserves, according to the Minerals Commission's records. This may not be in addition to what the minister in February stated that they had already at that time granted 6 forest entry permits and 2 mining permits in forest reserves, which included those operated by Kwantwi Limited and Shirano. So I just want to mention quickly the 8 mining reserves which have been granted mining leases. Draw River Forest Reserves, which is also a GSBA. 84% of it has been granted for mining. 84%. And it is Better Land Ghana Limited, which is operating there. Second one, Noe South Forest Reserve, which is also a GSBA, is being operated by Capsod Mining Limited. 18% of it. Boentano Forest Reserve, which is also a GSBA. Unipower Company Limited is the one mining it. Memire Forest Reserve. Nana Asan Resource Limited, which the concession is covering an area of 59%. And Krabia Forest Reserve, being mined by Hapik Mining Limited, covering 61%. Tanahia Forest Reserve, mined by Clean Job Ghana Limited. And Hianso Forest Reserve, mined by Kwantwi Mining Company Limited. Oda River Forest Reserve, mined by Sam and Jan Limited. As we speak, there are 14 more applications under different stages of consideration by the Minerals Commission, including an application by a company called High Street Ghana Limited for mining in the Kakum National Park. That application is under validation stage, and according to the concession map provided, it will cover about 24% of the reserve. So in all, about 15 forest reserves that the licenses and applications will cover. They are Enhianso Forest Reserve, Boentano, Bonsa River, Bonsa Mbepo, Draw River, Kakum National Park, Komisa Forest Reserve, Kokroswe Forest Reserve, Mamre Forest Reserve, Noe South Forest Reserve, and Krabia Forest Reserve, Oda River Forest Reserve, Tanahia Forest Reserve, Tanasoro Extension, and Tutua Shelter Bed. Ladies and gentlemen, you now agree with me that this LI needs an immediate attention of all stakeholders here. I dare say that we already have enough in our hands with respect to destruction of forests by illegal miners. If in less than 1 year of the coming into force of LI2462, we are seeing this massive destruction, legal destruction of our forest reserve, we can imagine what will happen in the next 5 years and a decade if nothing is done. Your guess is as good as mine. Based on this and other information, we commissioned seasoned lawyers to give a legal opinion on the new regulation on mining in forest reserve. Therefore, today we are here to provide you information on the legal opinion on the new regulation on mining in forest reserve. Perhaps this is the first time some of you may be taking a look at it, so that we are not just doing a talk shop. At least you get to know some of the provisions in that LI. We also want to provide insight to the policy implication of the new regulation on mining in forest reserve. Furthermore, we want to give a chance to industry players in the forest sector to tell us what, in their perspective, the impact of this LI on the forest industry. And we want to get a feedback from you, stakeholders here. What should be the next step for a progressive framework for protecting forest reserve? Ladies and gentlemen, on that note, we look forward to the outcomes and recommendations of our engagement this morning, and to working with all of you to ensure that the protection of our forests, our water bodies, and the serene environment on which the cocoa industry we so cherish thrives. On that note, you are most welcome, and I wish all of us a productive workshop. Thank you. Okay, long and whiny, but I hope you got something out of it. Thank you everybody. Thank you for the clap and thank you for the attention. Okay, so now we want to, yes, the good thing is that you're not supposed to ask me a question. Yes, your questions are deferred to the next. No, he said not necessarily. He's defending it. Okay, so we will go to the main presentation, and the main presentation is a research and a legal opinion on the LI itself. On the LI itself. So the person to do that presentation for us is a partner. He said, what is that? Of Telecrap, a senior lawyer. Please, let's welcome Clement Akapam. Clement.
I'm here this morning with two of my colleagues from the office, Albert Simreku and Daniel. So if you ask me the question and I can't answer, they'll answer. So we've been asked to look at the regulation 2462 and then give an opinion. And the good thing about an opinion is that it's an open book. So you take the legislation and then you travel with it as long as you want to go, but making sure that you stay within certain boundaries. So this morning, in the next 30 minutes or less, we will try to set a certain context, because there's a need for that background understanding of our sources of law and what will make a piece of legislation valid in our country. And then we will also want to understand briefly how law is made, and in that context, in the lawmaking process, we will know specifically how LIs are made. And then based on that, we will have a background and context within which to look at this LI. Finally, we will go into what we identify as challenges and what this morning the Holy Spirit said I should call sinful provisions. Sinful. I was torn between choosing sinful and offensive, but then I want to live here. So I chose sinful, because sinful is, yes. Then we give an idea of next steps, how we proceed, based on the information that we've shared. So when we come to Ghana, and like any other country, we have a constitution that outlines the different categories of laws that we have, and these categories are arranged in a certain hierarchy, and that hierarchy is very important in aiding us to determine the legality or otherwise of a piece of legislation. So sitting at the top of this hierarchy is the Constitution. So every other law, written, customary, must obey the tenets of the Constitution. Only yesterday, the Supreme Court struck out a provision in the Companies Act for being inconsistent with the provisions in the Constitution when it comes to fair trial. So if your law is inconsistent with the Constitution, it is null, it is void, and it's of no effect. So all laws must strive not to conflict with patent provisions in Constitution 1992. So that's at the apex. Then next to it is Acts of Parliament. Now these are the bills we take to Parliament for Parliament to subsequently interrogate through a certain process that ends up with the debate on the floor of Parliament, and then the law is passed. Recently in this country, we've had the Supreme Court strike down an Act of Parliament because there was not enough debate in Parliament. So it means that the processes that the law goes through before it is passed is as important as what the law seeks to regulate. So you can have a good law that goes through a wrong process in Parliament, it will be struck down. You can have a bad law that goes through the right procedure in Parliament. You have a hurdle to get it struck down. So these are the two evils we are faced with. Then after Acts of Parliament, we have orders, rules, and regulations. So this is where LIs will fall at the third level. So legislative instruments, constitutional instruments, and legislative instruments do not grow on their own. They are dependent on authority given to a certain minister to enact those regulations. So an Act of Parliament will give powers to a designated minister to issue regulations for a particular sector. So you cannot have a regulation that is not traceable to any Act of Parliament. So you have to derive your power from an Act of Parliament. Then we have what we call existing law. So the existing law will be all that was in place before 1992, and we have our common law, then we have customary law at the bottom. Now all these are supposed to align with Constitution 1992. So the hierarchy is important, and also the horizontal hierarchy is also important. So that if I have an Act of Parliament passed today, the provisions in that act is seen as to have modified provisions in a previous Act of Parliament, even though it has not expressly repealed it. So that horizontal hierarchy is also important. So that's our sources of law. So if we take LI2462, we can place it in this hierarchy under regulations. Under regulations. So how do we make laws? I put here two: Acts of Parliament and legislative instruments, so that I am able to draw a certain distinction for us. When it comes to Acts of Parliament, ordinarily a bill, and that bill will have what we call an explanatory text known as a memorandum accompanying the bill to Parliament. Now, the minister responsible for that sector will lay this bill in Parliament, but prior to the laying of this bill in Parliament, it will have to be gazetted for 14 days before it gets to Parliament. Now, the essence of the Gazette is public notice. Then it goes to Parliament, so that we will all know that this law is going to Parliament. Then if you have any issue, you start from. So the bill will be presented to Parliament, and then there's the first reading. Now the first reading is very procedural. There's nothing. The minister goes there and stands at the dispatch box. He will read an act to regulate how to eat fufu on a Sunday morning. Then he will bow. Speaker says, refer to appropriate committee. First reading done. That's all. So they don't read it like this is first reading. It's just procedural, reading the long title, bowing to the speaker, and then speaker saying, refer to the appropriate committee. So if it's fufu eating on Sunday, we'll refer it to the OBED committee. Then, yes. Then that committee will be in charge. They will look at the bill. They will invite people to bring memoranda. If you have issues with any part of it, you bring it. Then it goes back to the House after the committee with a report. And then at that stage, we have our second reading. Now the second reading stage, with an act of Parliament, Parliament as a body has the authority to make changes. They can remove certain provisions, they can add their own language, they can create, and they will do that collaboratively with the sponsoring ministry and stakeholders. So if, let's say, civil society has written a memoranda, has an issue, they will look at it. If it came from private sector, they will look at it and use that to amend. At this stage, they do what is called winnowing. Now, winnowing is the stage where we try to remove redundant provisions, provisions that are not adding anything to the legislation. Then there's the third reading. This is where the work, so between second reading and third reading, this is where the actual work happens. And this is the time that when you go to Parliament, you see a lot of people. I mean, you see the numbers are very large. When this work is happening, they read every provision and they vote on every single provision for an act of Parliament. So the process of making an act is very rigorous. That on the floor, someone will get up and say, no, I disagree. Then there will be a debate on that. If it's not resolved at that stage, it will be referred to the committee again. And then second reading will have to start again. Then third reading, after third reading, we will pass and send it to the President for Gazette. I would like to use the Wildlife Bill as an example. The Wildlife Bill has gone through all these stages and more for 12 years. So it means that every year it dies and then it's reintroduced. Thankfully, Parliament passed it, but it has still not left Parliament to the presidency for signature. Because, as we have heard, Parliament has noticed some redundancy in wording, and that correction is being done. The issue right now is whether that correction is a legislative correction or a clerical correction. Because if it is a clerical correction, then it need not go back to Parliament. But if it is of a legislative character, then it ought to go back to Parliament. We are praying that they will see that it's just clerical. Because if you replace Obed with Darrell, the value is the same. The value is the same. So that's the procedure for an act of Parliament, how to pass it. If you compare that with the legislative instrument, is markedly different, and the procedure is less rigorous, and it's a function of a number of things. One, urgency. Two, the desire, and this desire is represented in digits. The desire of the sector, ministry, or the ministry leading it to see it passed within a certain time frame. So it is these that will determine the speed with which a legislative instrument is passed. So it is passed by introducing it to Parliament. So an agency will introduce it to Parliament, but because Parliament cannot make any changes to legislative instruments, Parliament, by way of procedure, has introduced what they call the pre-laying stage for legislative instruments. Butterflies around me in this day and age. Let the N show and don't let M show, because butterflies. Right. Parliament has introduced a stage known as the pre-laying stage. And the pre-laying stage is for the subsidiary legislation committee. So the subsidiary legislation committee is a committee that only works on legislative instruments and constitutional instruments. So their focus is looking at the legislative instrument, if they are okay with it. So our legislative instrument, 2462, will go to the subsidiary legislation committee when it is laid in Parliament, after the pre-laying. Now, from the records, this LI was pre-laid January 13th, 2022. Then it was actually laid on the 27th of July, 2022. Because it's an LI, once it is laid officially in Parliament, time starts counting. After 21 days, if no action is taken by any member of Parliament to annul it or raise any issue with it, after 21 days, it passes. So November 29th, this law passes. We have seen processes of other LIs. In this room, LI 21, I see Chris. I wanted to say Chris's LI. In this room, drawn out discussions pre-laying with subsidiary legislation committee. In this room, this very room. So when I was walking here this morning, I was like, oh, this is deja vu. Where members will say, this provision cannot be there. No, 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 no. And what was interesting about that committee was that they also invited members from the Lands and Forestry Committee to join the subsidiary legislation committee. Because the subsidiary legislation committee will not have that background information. So they will be very technical. Okay, we look at it. Okay, we don't see any patent conflict, so we're okay. We have been asking for the report of the pre-laying session. There's no report. We've been asking for the report that was laid together with it in Parliament, and it is not a requirement, but it makes the process more involving, so that you know that this is what happened, this is how it has evolved up until this point. So the caveat is that these things show a certain involving nature of the lawmaking process and not mandatorily by law. So for LIs, all you need is to lay it in Parliament. And the laying is similar to how the bail for an act is laid. You read the long title, and then the speaker will respond that it is laid, and time starts counting. So for the timber legality regulation, when it was laid, there was someone who was always in Parliament to make sure that Parliament sat on that day. So immediately Parliament sits is one day, and start counting. The day they don't sit, it doesn't count. So when Parliament, immediately they say the opening prayer is enough. Even if they adjourn, it's a sitting. Then you mark it. After 21 days, it becomes law. And it's operational. So this process is what the LI2462, this process was what was applied to LI2462. Now let's look at the LI. Quick overview. There are some key facts. The LI is titled Environmental Protection Regulations. So at the end of the day, if I take this LI and I forget about what is in the bracket, so those who did proper English, I mean, those who were taught by the British, when things are put in the bracket, you know. So I'm expecting to see environmental protection regulations that don't do this here, do this, do that. So environmental protection into bracket, mining in forest reserves regulations. So that is the title, and that is the, so these are key facts. It was made, and the day it was made is not the same as the day it was laid. So it was made on the 23rd of June. There was Gazette notification, 27th July, entered into force 25th November. These dates, depending on where you are getting your information from, the dates are +2, -2. So my own gives me 27th, 29th. If you look at the information from Parliament, date of maturity is also 29. Now there's a reason for this, so that we don't get excited. Like we are seeing with the wildlife bill, it passed on a certain day. Now all these clerical or legislative changes that are going on might affect it if it doesn't go back to the floor of Parliament. So this is, when you see this, don't get worried. The dates, we can align them +1, +2, -2, it works. The second thing is that this is a regulation for mining in forest reserves. So ordinarily, you will expect the minister in charge of mining to be leading it, not to. Well, it was initiated by the Minister of Environment because it is an environmental protection regulation. So then the minister leads it under the advice of the board. Which board is this? The EPA board. Forget about any liaison committee or liaison group. They are not the ones who made it. It is on the advice, and if you take the law, it is there in black and white. Read it. In exercise of the power conferred on the minister responsible for environment and on the advice of the board under subsection 1 of section 62 of the Environmental Protection Agency Act 1994, Act 490, these regulations are made. So it's clear. It's their board. So it is the EPA board that said, let's do it. And the minister agreed with the board because the EPA board is the minister's board, and he initiated it in Parliament. Now, if you look at the regulation, there are three main things it seeks to do. To ensure efficient use and protection of natural resources, to ensure effective stakeholder consultations, and then efficient administration and disbursement of some 0.6 funds that will come in. So these are the main things you will see if you look at the regulation. Now, in the regulation, you see what they call excluded zones. So for us, areas where you cannot undertake mining for whatever reason. Globally significant biodiversity areas, you see that is not red, it is orange, because it's green and red when you mix it. I don't know my colors, but I'm sure it will turn orange. Then there are protected areas, institutional research plots, hill sanctuaries, high conservation value, seed orchards, swamps, plantation sites, cultural sites. These are excluded. We're saying that these are no-go areas. Now I'll show you why globally significant biodiversity areas is not a no-go area as such when we look at the Act. Then, if you look at permits and approvals, hey, journalist of the year. If journalist of the year is taking you a picture, I have to pose. I've posed. Erastus, congratulations. So if you look at the regulation as well, there are a list of approvals that you must receive before undertaking mining in a forest reserve. From the regulation, it says the first thing you must receive is the mineral rights. Ain't that interesting? The title of this regulation is what? So what should be the first? So the first is mining rights. Before you have your environmental permit, your water permit, mining operating permit, then you are going to mine in a forest. And that's the last approval and permission you need. So imagine that you've gone through all the processes to get approvals. As they say, when it gets to the Forestry Commission, whom am I? Whom am I? Do you know how difficult it is to get a mining right? Which mining right, if it's giving you a right to exploit, will have to be ratified by Parliament. It's not prospecting and reconnaissance. This is a mining right. It means that you have a right to remove the resource. And our Parliament has given you blessing. If you have that, whom am I? To say that I won't allow you. You would have entered already. So this permit system also brings up a certain lack of clarity, which we'll point out as we go along. Then we have exploration safeguards. So to be fair, there are provisions in here that intend to mitigate a certain harm that will be done during the process. So no use of heavy and earth-moving equipment, no chainsawing, use of... What? People are laughing. It means they are using it. You know? So there are a list of safeguards in there. And also some operational measures that you must take into consideration. So protect surface drainage systems from contamination. Ancillary mining activities must be situated outside of the forest reserve. So, to be fair, there are provisions that safeguards their exploration and also operational measures. What the LI also does, interestingly, is to set up institutions. So there are 3 committees. The steering committee, the liaison committee, and the local liaison committee. So the steering committee, as the name implies, is the one at the top steering the affairs. And it is made up, we'll see the composition very soon. And then the liaison committee looks more like a technical committee. And then the local liaison committee, at the level of where the activity is taking place, there's a certain local involvement. So these institutions are set up. Now, how these institutions are managed, their finances, their functions, everything is also set up in the regulation. The regulation also has offenses. So penalties. If you do certain things, says we will not grant a license for a prohibited area. Acts done in contravention of exploration activities required by a license holder. We are not, also all these are offenses. Siting of ancillary facilities within the forest reserve. Contravention of guidelines of the liaison group. So if you do all these things, they are offenses. But what we realize with the offenses, the penalties are actually lower than the penalties in the substantive regulations for the different sectors. So a penalty, for instance, for entering into a forest reserve to do certain acts, that penalty is higher than what this regulation is. We're expecting that if this regulation is environmental in nature, then actually the penalties here should have actually been higher, but it cannot do that. You know why it cannot do that? There's an act of parliament, so it cannot seek to have, so we'll see that. So we put some of the fines here compared to the offenses under the act, and you see that it is not. So this is what we have in the law. What are the challenges that we see? We have highlighted the challenges as follows: capacity challenges, illegitimate source of authority. We've highlighted the weak sanctions regime. We're moving towards a certain inclusion. We don't see that inclusion in here. And then the last challenge is information about a certain lack of effective consultation leading to the passage of this law. So let's start with the first: capacity to regulate. If we are to do a poll in this room this morning and ask the question, who has the capacity to regulate mining in forest reserves? Would it be the EPA, the Minerals Commission, the Forestry Commission, or all of them, all of the above? Why are we talking about capacity to regulate? If you look at our constitutional structure, when it comes to the management of our natural resources, they are handed over to natural resources commissions. So these natural resources commissions are either created expressly by the Constitution or by an act of Parliament, like the Fisheries Commission. So if the intention is to regulate mining in forest reserves, then we're saying that there is a certain lack of capacity of the EPA to do that, to regulate. The EPA might have capacity to regulate the environmental aspects, so the safeguards. So if the EPA had come out to publish safeguards and operational guidelines on mining in forest reserves, then it's for the Forestry Commission to also decide which forests, because the forest is given to them to manage, which forests are available or will be made available or can be made based on a decision of the Forestry Commission Board. So this capacity to regulate is one of the things that we think doesn't sit well Then there's capacity to enact, which is different from the capacity to regulate. So who has the power to make the law? I read the long title to you, and I told you this morning that when it comes to regulations, an act of parliament must give you the authority to what? To do that. Now, if you look at the section 62, that the EPA relied on to pass this regulation, this is section 62. It says, the minister may, on the advice of the board by legislative instruments, make regulations for standards and code of practice relating to protection, development, and rehabilitation of environment. I don't see mining there. The category of undertakings, enterprises, constructions, or developments in respect of which environmental impact assessment or environmental management plans is required by the agency. Similarly, I don't see. If you go through it from A to H, and H says matters for which permits are required under this act and generally for giving effect to this act. If you take the Environmental Protection Act 490, there's nothing about mining in it. So we cannot be relying on section 62 as the basis to enact, because that basis is not there. That basis is not there. So capacity to regulate, capacity to enact is very important. It's very important. Then if you read through it, there's a certain usurpation of presidential authority. And this is done tactfully. The first is that forest reserves largely are created by executive instruments. And these executive instruments are under the authority of the president. The president also has the power to de-gazette, also through executive instruments. Now you realize that the LI is in substance trying to say that mining can happen in forest reserves, even though the forest reserve still maintains its character as a forest reserve. That's what the LI is saying. And that is respectfully incongruous, because it is a forest reserve. It has not been de-gazetted. If the interest is to mine, then that area should be de-gazetted by executive instrument. So this is also something we need to. Yes. So these are the challenges. Now, these challenges reflect in what I have called the sinful provisions. The first one we've pointed out to you already, the section 62. And this is what it says. It says, these regulations apply to mining activities in forest reserves. These regulations shall be read together with other relevant enactments. And then there's a list. You see, if you are doing the work of God, you don't fear Satan. Look at what is happening in here. Look at B. What is B? Forest Protection Act, 1974. NRCD 243. Look at here. L. Forest Protection Act, 1974. NRCD 243. This will not pass Attorney General. First year attorney. Attorney General. So did this go through the Attorney General's department? It's my question. Because we have worked with them and we know how diligent they are. When you are doing the work of God, you don't fear Satan. Another sinful provision, it says, a person shall, and keep this word in mind, undertaking. Okay? Keep it.
a person shall, before undertaking a mining activity in a forest reserve, obtain, the second word I want you to keep is sequentially. It means, so if we are arranging ourselves in this room, short, shorter, shortest, Obed will come first, then we'll follow. Objection, overruled. Sequentially, the permits and approvals specified in the first schedule. Okay? Good. Undertaking. Sequentially. Let's go to the first schedule. What do you obtain first? From where? Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Then what do you obtain second? Good. Let's look at what their own law, their Act 490, Environmental Protection Act, what it says. Undertakings requiring registration and issue of environmental permits. No person shall commence any of the what? Specified in Schedule 1 to these regulations or any undertaking to which a matter in the schedule relates, unless what? To the commencement, the undertaking has been registered by the agency and an environmental permit has been issued. This is their law, it's not my law. This is the regulation on environmental impact assessment. So if truly the title of the law is environmental protection, then the first thing we need to do is to do the EIA for EPA to say, no, this area, no. So we are not even giving you the permit to even move to the next stage. If the title is anything to go by. Now let's see what the undertakings are. What they do when they are giving you your permit. It says, the agency shall, on receipt of an application and any other relevant information required, as an initial assessment, screen the application, taking into consideration the location is in the forest, the size is a small area, what will be the output of the undertaking. So they will look at all this. They will look at the technology intended to be used. Now C is very important. It says the consent of the general public, if any, and in particular consent of immediate residents. So it means that if the intention of 2462 is to protect the environment, we should do this first and get this permit first before any other discussion. Before any other discussion. But we don't go and get our mining rights. And then I come and you are raising issues. No, it doesn't work like that. So if you look at their own regulation, and this is the EPA's regulation on EIA, and you compare it to what this LI is saying, it doesn't work. Another sinful one, I think this is the most sinful. It says in Regulation 3, a person shall not issue a license or permit to any person to undertake mining activity, including exploration activity, in the following areas. And then there's a list. Beautiful. Then in 2, despite media, it says, despite paragraph A of sub-regulation 1, so it's only A, the president may, subject to Article 268 of the Constitution, give approval in writing to a mining company to undertake mining activity in a globally significant biodiversity area in the national interest. I don't know what is in the globally significant biodiversity area. But we are told that even though we have excluded it, that exclusion, we can take it back. The question is why? Why? Look at the composition. And here also, you are the technical people, the people working on the ground, so you will advise and tell us. The composition of the liaison group. It says, one representative of senior managerial level from the Forestry Commission, the Forestry Services Division. Where is that? In the Forestry Commission. So the people who did this, do they understand the sector? That you say Forestry Commission, and then you mention Forestry Service. So on the steering committee, also the composition is made as follows. The head of the Forestry Commission, which will be the CEO, and then the head of the Forestry Services Division, which will be the executive. Can the executive director of FSD go and sit in a meeting with CEO and disagree? So what's going on here? And this division is not autonomous. Once you mention Forestry Commission, it's Forestry Commission and its divisions. Commissioner, true or false? Permission to proceed. Aha, thank you. So you see that, yes, there's a certain, we don't know what, but there's a certain something. So these provisions, if you are looking at a law, you ask yourself, the person leading the law, the person understand the sector, were people consulted from the sector? Is Forestry Commission happy with this composition? Yes, it's fine. Oh, my last sinful didn't come. Hey, the sins have started to vanish. This is amazing. So, you see, let me talk to it, Baba. I will point you to, if you have your section 13 of the regulation, it says, a mineral rights holder shall ensure that the mine is operated in accordance with approvals granted by, and here, the approvals, the first approval is the agency. The agency is the EPA, before the Forestry Commission, before the Minerals Commission. So in 13, the list of approvals they've created there doesn't match with the schedule that they have created themselves. If you look at Regulation 15, it says, a mineral rights holder shall conduct an environmental impact assessment in accordance with the Environmental Assessments Regulation for purposes of obtaining an environmental permit. This provision here alone means that all the other provisions do not add up, because that is the first thing you need to do, and they put it here as 15. Let me share the last one. We can proceed. There's funds and disbursement of funds. And when you look at the funds and disbursement of funds, we also don't get clarity, because If you look at Schedule 4, it says monies will be shared according to a certain formula. That is the 0.6 that comes to them. 50% will be managed by the liaison group and used for development projects in local communities. 30% will go to the liaison group administration for research, capacity building and development, and rehabilitation of degraded areas within forest reserve. And then 20% for impact and sustainable projects in consultation with major stakeholders like chiefs, civil society, and district assemblies. Now, this is very worrying because if you look at Regulation 42, it says the funds under Regulation 41 shall be disbursed on a formula A to be agreed between the chiefs within the area of a forest reserve. So we are now going to agree on the formula with the chiefs, where mining activity takes place and the liaison group, and then as set out in the 4th schedule. So in the 4th schedule, you are giving us a formula, but then you are also telling us that you're going to, So there are other, so like the lack of gender. So the new laws that are coming, you see that when they are appointing people to committees, they'll say at least one representative from women or less vulnerable groups. You don't see that in this weak sanctions, and then lack of consultation. And how did we get to know about this LI? And at least this area, we do some work here. And we have a group where we discuss things. Someone posted, is there a law on mining in forest reserves? They said, there's no law. And keep the date March in mind. I was like, no, there's no law. Then we start our checks. You call the relevant, because if it's mining in forest reserve, there are 2 places you're calling. The Ministry, Forestry Commission. The minister says, oh, no, there's nothing like that. So really? Okay. Oh, no, there's nothing. It's guidelines. What is there is guidelines. Okay. Fast forward, not the whole law, but the front page is posted. Okay. So truly there's a law. Then you start asking people questions with that front page. Hey, no, this one, hey, I've also not seen it. Okay, let's check with this person. So it looks like, yes, there's a law, but the law is known by those who made the law. And as they say, ignorance of the law, so the law is there. But how the law got there is... So, in sum, we have summarized everything about this LI into 3 words. 3. This LI sins against what we call legislative dissonance. There is disharmony. The LI does not link with provisions in existing regulation. Capacity to enact, capacity to regulate is missing. There is legislative redundancy. There is an LI already that deals with environmental impact assessment. And if that LI is implemented 10%, then the third one is what we say is incongruous. That's lawyers' language. There are a lot of inconsistencies that you can point out. Even simple clerical, we've pointed out. Simple substantive. You have Forestry Commission, Forestry Services Division. I don't know whether that was the proposal they wanted to work with, but it doesn't sit with how law is made. So you can conclude whether it's a good law or bad law. The conclusion is yours. A good law is a good law, a bad law is a bad law. Next steps, ending. There are two options to deal with this. All the options have pros and cons. Option 1, legal action. Option 2, let's take advantage of a certain political climate. Option 1, your timeline is between 18 to 36 months. I told you earlier on that yesterday the Supreme Court struck down a provision. That case has been in the Supreme Court for 2 years. 2. So, if we want to take legal action, is this a constitutional enforcement interpretation issue? Is it a judicial review? These options are available, and time is very important. The next is, the butterfly is here. So let's take advantage of our association. This is end. And then, because you'll be surprised that persons who ordinarily you expect to know about this regulation have no idea. And they feign, maybe they don't want to be associated with it, but they feign the same level of ignorance as we do. So these are the two options available to us. The ball is now in our court. Thank you very much for your attention.
I told you so. Please, let's give him a hand of applause. Big one, big one. A big one. Thank you. Yes. No, I haven't granted authority for a question. Take your time. Let's sink it in. He wants the presentation. If you actually provided your name and then provided your email, we will send it to you. All right. Okay, so Senior, take a seat. We're not doing very well on time. But I know that when it is hot, strike when it is hot. I know that people have a lot of questions. We wanted to go for a break, but I know a lot of you will forget about your questions when you take something. So let's ask the questions now. I think I'm going to give you like 30 minutes. We'll ask the questions, then we'll go for a break and then come back. So let me take, if I have a course of 5 questions, I will take it, and let's see your response. If there are any, then we take the next batch. Any questions? Okay, so I have a hand here.
Mine is both a question and a suggestion rolled into one. I'll be very quick. My question is, why can't we pursue both options, seeing that a legal course of action will take a certain amount of time? And for the political approach, why can't we get the leading contenders on record in front of the press to give their reaction to this, having pointed out all the inconsistencies, incongruities, and the bad nature of the law?
Okay. Over.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kapam, you gave us the vertical hierarchy of law, and you also mentioned the horizontal. So in the context of the horizontal hierarchy of law, how can we, where and how do we deal with this law? You mentioned that there is the EPA, the LI that regulates the environmental permits, and knowing that that is an earlier law, or an earlier LI, and this is a newer LI, within the horizontal context, how does those two react? I don't know if the question is clear. Perfect.
A comment. Should we take a comment? Comments now? Okay. I think I don't see a lot of hands up. Okay, there are some.
Okay, you mentioned that within the space of this
1
year, almost 10 or so. 8. But you mentioned some are coming on.
12 applications.
Good. So 20. Now 18 to 36 months. How many? Molly, I know there's gold in Molly if you don't do something quick.
Okay, so his question is that we get the conclusion. Okay, so Dr. Adam, and then I'll come to you, and then we'll answer and come back.
Thank you. Mr. Akapam, this is a very interesting and a serious presentation that you've made on the resources that we all depend on. But like was mentioned in the morning, there are several stakeholders in the room now. There are actions to be taken. Which stakeholder group would you recommend takes up the action?
Okay, so our last question before for this group, please.
Yeah, I want to know why the government of Ghana signed the emission reduction agreement with the World Bank. I want to know the reason and compare to this law too.
Okay, it's a good question, but I'll be so. So, please, I'll come back. Otherwise there will be too many questions for him to respond at a time. So, it's a follow-up question. Okay. All right.
So, so far, 8 leases have been granted in the GSBs, leading up to 20. Now we are told that we have to take legal action. We need a time frame of 18 to 36 months. Meanwhile, things are happening. Is it possible for an injunction to be put on those contracts that have been signed already till these things are resolved? Otherwise, by the time this is done, all the GSBs will be gone.
So thank you. Obed, the two LIs, they are regulating different subject matters. So one is specifically on environmental impact assessment. And this one we're looking at is on mining in forest reserves. So the subject matter is not the same. So you cannot say that this one has changed provisions, and you will see that those LI2462 will mention environmental impact assessment in 15, in regulation 15. So it cannot be said that one is changing because they are regulating two different subject matters. Then the earlier one will be the one. So if we have provisions in 2264 that are at odds with the one in the EIA regulation, the 2462 will be the one that will, yes. Then Dr. Adams' question, who should do this? This private sector. But I don't see, it's the forest people I'm seeing here. I'm not seeing the mining people here. Yes, so it's the private sector, civil society. Then you do one walk on a very good Saturday. So it has to be jointly. I mean, but that's what I'm saying, that I'm not seeing the mining, or maybe I don't know the mining private sector, but I'm not seeing them here. They are the biggest beneficiaries of this. So their input is also, and I tell people that, listen, if you are private sector, you say, I want to do my business, so I don't care. Once I get the permit, they have given me the permit. A day is coming when that permit you are holding, the same people who gave it to you will tell you that it's wrong. X-ton cubic is there for all of us to know. Okay. Now, on injunctions by Albert, if you don't start the main action, you cannot ask for an interim order. So an injunction is on the back of you starting the main action, and then you tell the court that, listen, there's imminent danger. And my lord, if you don't do that, you die soon, because when the last tree dies, my lord, you die. Then the judge will shake and put injunction. Yes. But you have to start the main action first before you can apply for injunction. Yeah. Yes, the two actions, yes, they can run parallel. Actually, one has, there's a way of doing, and these are the campaigners. They know how to do this best. First, they start with discussions, and then when it fails, they'll tell you that if it doesn't work, we'll take this action. So it can run parallel. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually been granted these leases, right? But we know that most of these companies are just fronts for other companies. Can we do a deep dive into who actually owns these companies? Yeah. And if necessary, can we bring legal action against the foreign owners of these companies?
Okay. This is simple to do. Anybody can do it. The beneficial ownership search, if you conduct it at the company registry, they will provide it for you. So, but it's part, yeah, but it's part of some of the advocacy processes we take, and I think it's good that people. So let me commend the Mineral Commission for publishing all the companies which have applied and which have been granted, their names and even their contact persons. It's very interesting that they have decided to publish it. There are some of the information you need to have a technical. For example, the maps, they give the coordinates. So it means that you have to pick the coordinates and if you have a system, drop it, and it will show you where exactly it is happening. Yeah, but it is good that for transparency, they are putting that kind of information. So in terms of what we asked about finding out who is behind it, yeah, I think it will be interesting to do. If not for anything at all, you will be surprised people who may be behind all of this. Yeah.
Also, then there was a question on the EPA. Yes. So we've made certain commitments under our NDCs, we've made certain commitments, but if you look at those commitments and the things we're doing, it doesn't match. So it's incongruous.
Okay, so let's take a next batch of questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so Hannah.
Thank you very much
for come to you,
this wonderful presentation.
Okay.
The funny aspect of this whole process is that you have an activity that is supposed to be regulated by a body, and then a different body formulates laws for that. I think we need to look at it from that angle. Forestry Commission is supposed to regulate forests. Minerals Commission is supposed to regulate mining. And EPA is supposed to regulate the environment. Here we are, we have the regulator of environment developing something for destruction of the environment and then destruction of lives and everything. So who is going to regulate this new mining in forest reserves? And at times, I just want to state that from your background. I remember when I was young, 2002, 2003, we started talking about no mining in forest reserves and the need for us to really pay attention to the proposals that the state was making then. And we screamed, and it was as if we were anti-developers. Now here we are, we have no forest in Ghana because per those LI, everything is under, it's available for anything. And so at times as citizens, this one, I'm just talking generally, we need to be more interested in the resources that God gave us as our capital and see how we can protect that. Rather than waiting and assuming that if I'm benefiting from this angle, I don't need to talk, because if I talk, my bread will not be buttered. Thank you.
Okay. It's more of a comment. Please let me go. Okay. So senior note will respond to it. Who's supposed to regulate under this law? Okay. The Hartman, then I'll come to you. Then I'll go like this. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kapat. You indicated in your presentation that Forestry Commission being the last to issue permits to enter the forest, you had an issue with it. I think if we have strong institutions and we can be of our own, then the Forestry Commission's position to be the last to give the permit out for entry is important.
Okay.
Because if we refuse, you can't go there. If we are strong enough to defend our authority to issue out permits for you to enter, then we being the last to actually determine who enters there, I think it is a good position.
Okay.
So
that's the question. That's good. Okay, so I'll go to the next table on my right hand side. Yes. Oh, she's finished. Somebody has asked her question. Okay.
For me.
Oh, but you have asked a question before.
Yes, but from my previous experience, even Forestry Commission, I doubt.
Oh, you are answering his question. Yes.
I'm adding to his question. So okay, when you are answering.
Maybe ask the question, then we can leave it to.
If I want to bring an experience from Rosewood, where Forestry Commission issues salvage permits to my own land, and I don't know that somebody is coming to work on my land, I doubt. Forestry Commission,
okay.
I doubt.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I'll take two more, then we'll come back to it. Okay, so you, and then I'll go to the next.
Thank you very much. We are very much grateful to the team that is organizing this. Highly grateful.
My attention has been drawn that if you can introduce yourself, just mention your name, then ask the question to help.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm Kofi Osare, a retiree from the Forestry Commission. Yes, I guess that of the two options you gave, one political, the other legal, I think we should also be lobbying the DPs, the international, because Ghana has signed up to so many conventions. The GSBAs, at that time, wanted to enact legislation to strengthen it. We couldn't reach that stage. But it's high time, because we took money to set up the GSBAs, and the nation committed itself to protecting it for posterity. So we cannot sit down for somebody to just casually come and do away with it. It is supposed to be there in perpetuity. That's why you can't go there to do anything you want, and it has stringent provisions. And then there was a portion of the presentation that I couldn't understand well, whereby the president could override and grant GSBAs. Could that be in such a law instead of maybe the Minerals Concession Act or something? So to me, that is a big issue. You cannot use an EPA law to, yes. So thank you very much. There are so many other issues. So please, I think if you could pass some kind of paper around so that we could give our comments and you handed it over to those who are handling it. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Okay, so I'll take the last question and then we'll respond to it. But a lot of them seem to be comments instead of questions. Okay, so maybe I'll take, yes.
Mine looks like a comment.
Okay.
In fact, my name is Erastus Asaredonko. Okay. I've been doing some works
in
Galamsey areas. I've recently done something on Apamprama Forest Reserve.
Yes.
And we've been to Tano Nimri as well. We've been to Boy Tano. What happens on the ground is totally different from what we are talking about here. In fact, in some cases, we found complicity of Forestry Commission officials, even in the destruction of the forest they are supposed to protect. What happened in Apamprama Forest Reserve? I see connivance. Because in 2018, we went there, we saw Imperial Heritage. Under the guise of reclamation, they were mining the forest. They had a prospecting license at the time. But they had over 35 excavators in the forest. And that's contrary to law. Now they mined the forest. The Forestry Commission that gave them the entry permit did not go to see whether indeed what their license says is what they are doing in the forest. And they allowed them to mine for a period of 4 years without doing anything. So now when you go to Apamprama, it's all gone. It's left with patches. And I have seen a similar thing happening in Tano Nimri. Akonta Mining went in there.
Yeah.
We saw them. Whether they had license or not, the Forestry Commission was there. What did they do? And they allowed the gentleman to mine and continue to mine until we did an expose on it, and then forcibly they removed their equipment. Now if you go there, other miners have also gone in there, and they are, the last time I went there, and we are coming up with Forest Under Siege, Tano Nimre, you see the destruction. So what is the duty of the Forestry Commission in protecting the forest? When somebody comes with a prospecting license, and then you say, okay, open sesame, go and mine, or do prospecting. They don't go back to check whether you are doing prospecting or you are doing actual mining. The least said about Minerals Commission, the better. So seriously, I ask myself, with all these fine laws and whether they are good or bad or whatever, the implementers on the ground are the real problems. And we cannot continue to do this to ourselves. So it's like the animal that goes and muddy the water upstairs and then come back to the base to ask who muddied the water. We should take the blame. We should do something about this. It's our very existence we are destroying.
Yeah.
We are destroying the forest. We are not even. And the last time I checked, we have a $103 million loan from the World Bank to reclaim these lands. And
they're going to buy more.
And Ghanaians are going to pay for it.
They're going to mine.
They have not stopped mining. So you reclaim, and they are destroying it. There are areas they planted trees and other things. The last time we went to Apamprama, they are destroying even the trees that they reclaimed and planted. So what are we doing?
Okay, so we're going to have a presentation by Dara that will look at these policy implications as well. So, my lady, before I go back to Clement, oh, you are okay. So, yes. Senior, Commissioner wants to ask the last question, and I guess we can go for a break. I think he's going to provide all the answers.
Maybe I'm going to muddy the waters, maybe. Now, from the presentation, I think there are some conflicting positions taken where one level of law enactment conflicts with what the procedure should be. And in all this, and the question is, there is somebody who is supposed to take a look at all these processes and advise their legal acceptance. Did the research examine whether there was proper advice from, let's say, the AG in drafting this new LI? That is to say, assuming that the draft was submitted for any reflection to see how it sits with the country's, legal making processes. That is one. The second one is, if the whole discussion started with guidelines, and assuming that the guidelines were to cure some inactivity within either Forestry Commission or Minerals Commission for not maybe monitoring and implementing their own protective, responsibility, and if that is why it is the EPA law that is being used for these purposes, would we say that the EPA law then has now been overstepped and taken upon itself assignments that do not belong to the EPA? And if that is to be done, isn't it a legal approach to use to cure that, ill? So of the two options that are being given, we've gone to a position where I don't know whether the political maneuvering and so on can be done without us being accused of maybe taking political sides. Wouldn't it be more of a legal approach? And like somebody asked, once that approach has been taken, then the necessary steps be taken so that further damage would not be done whilst we are addressing the legal, the legal interventions that will stop this menace. That's my observation and question.
Okay. Thank you. So I think that the Antiana's question on who should regulate. The question is, who should regulate what? We have Minerals Commission regulating mining, and we have designated places for mining. We have the Forestry Commission managing and protecting our forest. When did that become bled? It's not bled. So if the area is no longer a forest reserve, there's a process you go through to de-gazette it, and then it is not of concern to the Forestry Commission again. So it's not, you can't have a committee, sectorial, different ministers coming together. The law is clear. Mining is regulated by this. The forest is managed and protected by this other agency. So if you want to mine, mining, as we know, if you look at how forest reserves are created, one of the things that you are not allowed to do in a forest reserve is to mine. It's clear, it's there. So if you want to mine in the forest reserve, then it's no longer a forest reserve. Be bold and call it what it is, that we are mining. And don't say we are giving 2%, 3% at the peripheral. That's the point. Otherwise, then, that's when the question will arise, who is managing it? But we have clear guidelines as to who regulates and who manages what. So that's to Auntie Anna. Then to Mr. Daz's question on Forestry Commission being the last, and it's good. Yes, if we have strong institutions, it's very good. We should all strive to have that. But if you look at the organizational structure, not even terrain, you have the Minerals Commission and the Forestry Commission both under a Minister of Lands and Natural Resources. So the mineral right is granted by the minister on behalf of the president. So if your sector minister, who gives you policy directions, has granted a mining right. He gives policy directions to the whole sector. So that's what we are talking about. I'm saying that that decision to mine in the forest reserve should be the one that is taken first. So FC should be able to sit down with its technical people and say, okay, the forest, these areas we can, because it's been degraded or whatever already, so we can forget about this side. Let's do proper degazetting and give it out. The rest, we are going to protect it. Once it falls under the map of a forest reserve, no discussion. But areas that are degraded or whatever, I'm not a technical person, but clearly that decision of what you do in a forest reserve is a question of law. And if you want to change it, you change the law or you use the legal processes to change it. Otherwise, we'll have this problem. Because, Mr. Dazi, I know you're a strong man. I mean, it only takes strong men to wear pink. So, but if you're occupying that seat and you're giving this kind of pressure, I'm sure you will buckle. So, yeah. Overruled. Then the question from Commissioner on whether or not the AGs. So, we were asked to do an opinion on the LI, not to go and do ground trooping. But I can tell you from experience that when you are drafting a law with an agency, the Attorney General's office provides what we call house style and direction. So the house style is how the text of the law should look, the font size, because it's not, they are very brilliant lawyers there, but it's not all those in the drafting unit who know the difference between a forest reserve. And during the wildlife bill, we mentioned trophy. And he said, but why are you allowing the person to take the trophy? He said, no, it's not trophy like a trophy. It's a trophy from an animal. So there is, we've not done that, but I'm sure that there will be some involvement with the Attorney General's office. But looking at this, they're very diligent. Because even with the LI on legality, timber legality, not once, not twice, more than 5 times they'll call you back and say, this thing we don't understand, tell us. Or if you don't tell us, then define it. And they'll go through it, they use pencil. They'll circle, they say, no, take this thing out. You've said it here. It doesn't match here. So I don't see that kind of in here. I'll be truthful. And I'm sure that if they see this, they will run away from it. They'll say, no, because it doesn't speak to have come from the drafting unit with the kind of little conflicts we're seeing, lack of clarity, and even how some of the text is written when you look at it. Because even the word sequentially, they will fight with you before they will use such subjective. They are very, so I don't see that in here. But I don't doubt that it went through. And if you look at it, the timeline for passing this law is less than a year. It's magic. It's less than a year. It doesn't happen anywhere in this country. Unless it is budget that you have to pass appropriation. That you do pre-laying in January. And then in November, you have an LI. Unless witchcraft. Because the processes they will pass, you will go through, so I don't doubt, but yeah. Then on your question about EPA getting out of its mandate, I mean, there are a lot of interesting things going on with EPA. Currently, this morning in the news, those who listen to the news, you hear that the EPA is asking for prosecutorial powers. This is contained in a bill they are trying to push to Parliament to convert the EPA from an agency to what? Good. You know the difference? Authority, you can do a lot more things. You can give license, you can give permits, you can do a lot of things. And in that bill also, there's even a fight already going on between those in charge of RED Plus, climate change activities, and the EPA, whether the EPA is supposed to just report or the EPA is supposed to regulate. So there's a certain, and now the EPA, they dress like the Forestry Commission, have you realized? They also have their same type of uniform, so maybe it is agency supremacy. that is leading to this, but Commissioner, you are laughing. You know the story, but you wanted me to say it. I'm saying that if you are doing the work of God, you don't fear Satan. So the point I'm making is that whichever option we decide to take, it must address the clear role of the EPA and what we want the EPA to do. Is it environmental protection or aiding environmental protection, whatever? So great. I think I have addressed
the questions. Okay, thank you. Thank you, all of you. I think we've been sitting for quite some time now. We have snacks ready. I'm giving you only 30 minutes. 30 minutes is too much, right? Okay, so yes, you agree with me. 15 minutes. Please, we have to be back here. There are more interesting presentations. We want to take the angle to look at the policy implications. And the policy we've set ourselves as Forestry Commission, or the Forestry Sector, not Forestry Commission, and all other related policies we are doing, planting, greening Ghana, all of those things, and seeing the complementarity or otherwise of this act. And we wanted to also listen to the forestry sector industry. How is this law complementary to the business of forestry? Please, 15 minutes. It's all agreed. So you may go. If you don't want to go, I can't force you. You can relax here. But anybody, if you have the use to, take some snacks, we have them just, when you go out on your left-hand side, snack is ready. Please, let's come back here. Yes, so if you haven't registered when you came here, please, there's a registration. There's some registration on the decks just when you are entering. Please try and write your name and provide your details. We will need it. Thank you. How are you?
Are you Mustafa?
Yes, I am.
Nice to meet you, Magdalena.
Okay, you're from FCDO?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Welcome.
Great to meet you.
Yes.
Just texted me, so we had to split because he has other things to do with the minister. He said he will email you today on other aspects, and he said you will know what it's about. So.